Universiteit Amsterdam. I'll talk a bit about cortical contributions to gait stability in humans, and I wanted to show you today the results of a new experiment that we did, but I cannot yet. I can only show you some pilot data. And when I talk about gait stability, I'm mostly talking about gait stability in the medial lateral plane. And as Friedel and Mark showed, we think that you do that by controlling where you place your foot or ankle torques in response to your center of mass position. And so we've been investigating that using this setup, which is a lateral stabilization setup. And basically, this is McDonald came up with this. It has two springs here on the side, and it pulls you towards the middle. So you have a conservative force field where if you move to the left, you're being pulled to the right and just stay in the middle. And so we've been working on this hypothesis that if you use this system, and I can show a video. Yes. If you use this system, your control system basically knows that you're using this system, and I don't know why this movie is longer. Okay. Yeah. So we also have cards that move back and forth so that you actually only have force in the medial lateral direction. So if you use this system, your control system notices this and it shuts off everything that you do to control your stability. And we've seen that because the correlations you see between center of mass state and foot placement, they disappear if you walk in this system. That's one of the examples. Another example is which I showed at Ben Walk in 2018. I want to recap here for the people that weren't there. If you put a galvanic vestibular stimulation on people, randomly varying stimulus, you will find coherent activity in the gluteus medius, which is the muscle responsible for pulling, one of the muscles responsible for pulling your leg out. You see this coherent activity during normal walking, and when you actually stabilize people, this coherent activity is gone. Yeah? And we've also done other studies using EEG. And if we do with EEG, we actually see that in the stabilized condition, you get higher beta oscillations, which are thought to be a sign of less motor control, especially around the motor cortex, premotor cortex.
What's beat power?
Beta power.
Beta
it's power in between 12 and 18 hertz. So you get more of those oscillations. And well, EEG is very nice, but if you've ever worked with it, you know that it's quite terrible if you do it during movement. So people don't trust me often when I show these results. They go like, well, no way. This is not an effect. And so what I want to work on, and what we're working on now, is another technique, and just like Peter, I like zapping people, but I zap people on the brain. We use TMS, which is a coil which you place above somebody's head. You induce a rapid magnetic pulse, which will induce a current in your bed cells, which go to your motor neuron pool, and then via your motor neurons straight to your muscle, where you can measure an MEP, a magnetic evoked potential. The thought here is that these MEP amplitudes, they vary with how excitable your cortex is. So if your cortex is more involved in motor control, you will find higher MEPs. So as you can imagine, you need to keep this coil quite straight above the head. And we built different setups for this. So this is what we have in Amsterdam. We wanted to use a robot, but it was too slow. And this is our setup that we have in Cardiff. And if you listen carefully, you can actually hear the zaps. And if you watch carefully, you can see alterations in the kinematics during the zaps. This one should be clearly visible. You see a little bit increase in that. Your left or right hip? Yeah? So just to show that we're able to keep the coil well above the head, if we do this and we calculate the middle of the coil from out the head and from out the coil, we see that the error there stays like below the millimeter, so that's really good, because usually when you do a hand positioning, you can't do it that well. I mean, unless you have very steady hands, of course, but most people are not. So then we're interested in how do these MEPs, these motor evoked potentials, fluctuate over the gait cycle. And then the idea is that if it fluctuates with background EMG, those are thought of as non-interesting, because, well, that's thought of as, that usually happens, but if you find modulations which are independent of the background activity, then it's a sign that there is more cortical involvement in the control of that muscle at that moment. And so I plot the horizontal gluteus medius. The red is the background activity and the blue are the MEP amplitudes. And you see here that during the swing phase, you see an increase in the cortical spinal excitability. Now this is really exciting when there's one subject. He's also like one, yes it's one subject. And also I don't have the stabilized condition yet. Because actually these were pilot experiments and we're facing, like getting this past ethics is more work than my usual experiments. Yeah, so this is the interesting part. So my future steps for this are to get ethical approval for these experiments as one, and then look at the differences between stabilized and normal walking. And actually I was hoping that I could present this to today, but I could not. And then also, if you do this, you should also take into account changes in your spinal excitability, because there's changes in your H reflexes also happening over the gait cycle, so actually you need to measure those as well. And that's like the future experiment that I hope to present next year. And that's it.
Were there, I don't know, I couldn't see all of the video, I'm kind of short, but were there responses to metric, or was it localized?
No, so even though the magnetic field you're shooting at is like, it's like that, but you can make it, you can aim it towards one side of the cortex, so that you get like one-sided response. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
What exact kind of motion are you hoping to excite? Are you trying to? Yeah.
I'm not trying to excite the motion. Insofar as I'm trying to understand if the cortex at that given moment is busy with controlling that given muscle. Yeah. Yeah.
How large is the magnetic field that we put on the head there?
So the coil is about, it's like, I think it's a 12 centimeter to 12 centimeter coil. But the magnetic field, like if you do the calculations to simulate the E field, it's like the electrical field is quite big. But I'm not too concerned with that in a way, because all I want to do is have a repeatable electric field in the specific part which is controlling your gluteus medius. So you have a lot of side damage, yeah, you're simulating a lot of other, yeah.
How heavy is and comfortable is the device in my head?
Oh, it's offloaded with a spring, so I didn't have time to go into the details of how we hang it up, but it's very well designed. You don't feel it. Yeah.
Have you thought about checking other muscles? Not so much for balance, but seeing how much central control is there?
Yes, of course, yeah. So I focused on balance now, but if we do these experiments, because you're hitting so much muscles at one time, I'm going to throw on all the EMG that I can, and basically do one experiment and then have as much data as I can, yeah. Yeah.
And what does it feel like when you examine the brain?
So it's really weird. So there's a lot of exclusion criteria, and one of them is ever having had an epileptical seizure, and I had. So I had it like a long time before, when I didn't do the research as a student. But it's kind of, you sit there and you hear this tick, because it makes a ticking noise. You could hear that in the video. And then you see your finger move, for instance. So it's like you don't feel it in your brain so much as that all of a sudden your muscle just moves. So it's far less uncomfortable than the E-stim. Because the E-stim is like, usually you get some kind of burning sensation as well. It's not so, yes.
Do you have any inkling if that might be what a person with Parkinson might be?
I have no clue. No. I'm there to say.
Was it hard to get the ethical approval?
We don't have ethical approval yet. So the data from the one subject, she's my collaborator, the girl in Solzia. She has ethical approval in Cardiff to do some experiments, but not the experiment we want to do, but we're getting there. And she is fine being exempt. She's like, and I'm also allowed, we're allowed to do pilot experiments as long as it's a pilot experiment without ethical approval. So this was a pilot experiment.
Thanks so much.